What countries are you seeing where the level of population growing exponentially is matching innovation, and which ones are you seeing that where the population grows, innovation is declining? What trends are you noticing?
Well, I would say that economic growth is really a combination of population and freedom. So you don't have to have a growing population necessarily if you're compensating for it with higher degree of economic freedom. So China starts to liberalize after 1978, and they have a very high economic growth rate. In fact, they are the most successful economy over the last, say, 40 years.
What, 58 or 68?
1978. China sort of drops hardcore communism. I mean, it takes time for them to liberalize in more areas. But the point is that during the 1980s and the 1990s, for the last 40 years, China has been growing quite rapidly, even though they did have the one-child policy. Now, my argument would be that if they didn't have the one-child policy, they would be growing even faster. India also has succeeded a great deal, partly because they started liberalizing. They started having a more capitalist system after 1991 reforms. And India has never implemented the kinds of draconian anti-population policies that China has. So those are two success stories. Ireland is another success story. The great disappointment over the last 30 years at least must be Japan, which has basically stagnated, but also many countries in Western Europe. Italy hasn't seen growth in the last 20 years, and places like that.
How has Italy not seen growth? They're some of the most attractive people in the world. They should be making babies.
Left and right.
Like I would assume, like when you're like Italian, stallion, you're thinking Sly, all these attractive people. For them to have that kind of emotional control, Vinny, it's got to be patriotic. To not, right?
To just
okay. So can you pull up the data I just sent you? Pull up the data I just sent you. The link I just sent you, where it shows countries whose population has grown the most. Can you go up so we can have actually the leaders bulletin? I don't know if the link I just sent you shows me a leaders bulletin. Do you see?
Actually, the map is quite telling. If you look at the map, you see that Africa is the darkest, has the darkest hue of the color on the map, and that's because Africa is still growing. In fact, Sub-Saharan Africa is the only region in the world where women have more babies than is necessary for replacement level. Replacement level is 2.1 children per woman per lifetime, and pretty much everywhere else in the world.
Can you explain that? 2.1?
Children per woman per lifetime. That's the replacement level. If you want to keep population stable, you need on average 2.1 children per woman.
We spoke about that last time.
Yeah, and as you can see, pretty much nowhere else in the world do you have a growing population except in Sub-Saharan Africa. So the question there is, why is Sub-Saharan Africa, even in spite of its growing population, not generating a lot of economic growth? And the answer is because they are generally not free. If you grow up in the slums of
Marian, get a little closer.
If you grow up in the slums of Lagos, for example, you could be a genius kid, but there is simply very little that you can do with your life. You're probably going to get a crappy education. You're probably never going to be able to go to university or implement your ideas in the marketplace because you don't have the capital or whatever. So once again, I emphasize that growth, economic growth, prosperity is an outcome of population times freedom.
So is there any correlation between lack of technology for, like, which country like if I look at this, statistics from 2012 to 2021, you see what countries have grown their population the most, okay? Iraq, very interesting, not sure why, 37%, okay? Go a little lower. Chad, Somalia, Benin, Maldives, Uganda, 33%, Kuwait, 27%, Afghanistan. Why are they increasing at the levels that they're increasing? Qatar, a lot of these are Muslim nations, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Israel, 18.37%, Philippines, 17%, Iran, 16%.
That's population path.
Growth from 2012 to 2021 on them growing the most. Turkey, by the way, again, a lot of these are Muslim nations. Keep going to see where we go. India, 11.2%, Canada, 10.7%, Costa Rica, 9.94%, Switzerland, 8.84%, Ireland, right there. Mexico, 8%. Norway's pretty much 8%. Brazil, 7.5%. U.S.'s population has grown 5.74% since 2012. We're ahead of UK. But keep going. I'm trying to see if anybody... Okay, China's 4.3%. They're seeming to have a net negative population in 2022. Some of the numbers that I saw, people that are fleeing and leaving. Spain, Okay, now we have negative, which you were talking about Italy. Minus 0.72 in the last 10 years. Japan, minus 1.53. Armenia, 3.23. Ukraine, Greece. Ukraine is down 4%. Romania is down 5%. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Croatia's down 9%. Puerto Rico's down 10%. And then you have at the bottom Marshall Islands. Okay, Puerto Rico, St. Martin. So when you look at this core, is there anything that says why Muslim nations are growing faster than others? Is there anything we know about that or no?
I actually don't know.
It's in the religion, in the Quran, that Muhammad said for them to spread out as much as they can, because their average, I think, is 3 kids, but the majority of the Muslims that we see are like 4 or 5 kids. But it's a religious thing where in the Quran it says to be flourish and as many kids as you.
Okay, so let's kind of see if we can come up with something. So one, to me, you just said is religion.
100%, it's in the Quran.
So if
100%.
we put religion as one, can we put culture as, because even Mormonism, right? Like
100%.
Mormons,
yeah.
The moment you have 5 kids, people ask if you're a Mormon.
100%.
At 4, they think you're still maybe
you might
Hispanic.
be a Christian, yeah.
But at 5, they ask if you're
They're
Mormon.
like, wait a minute, are you?
Yeah, I get
you
asked.
read the book.
I get asked if I'm Hispanic, but
100%.
I know if
You're
you draw
not.
the line at 5.
Yeah.
We're from Bountiful, Utah.
Yeah.
So religion, we have culture. Do you notice that the less there is technology, advancement, distractions, more babies are being born? Is there a correlation between that? Like, how back in the days people would say, well, we had 11 kids, but because we had no TV.
There's certainly a correlation between being a rich country and having fewer babies, partly because most rich countries also have a very high percentage of women who are in the workforce, staying at home, taking care of children has a much higher opportunity cost than going and work in the marketplace. So let's say that a woman becomes a banker and can bring in $250,000 or $500,000 a year home. Staying at home, basically, and taking care of children means that the cost is between $250,000 and $500,000, right? Whereas if you are a woman, say, for example, in an African village, and you are not really a part of the official workforce, but you still work, obviously. I mean, you work at home, you're a homemaker or whatever, but you're not actually bringing in any monetary income, then the household is not suffering that kind of opportunity cost.
You know what else I'd want to know? I'd want to also know which countries in the world lead in abortion. Is there a way to pull up this data?
Pretty sure it's going to be
which countries in the world lead in abortion? Like, what are abortion laws in, if we can just pull up leading, what is that? Top 10 countries with the highest abortion rates annual per 1,000 women. Wow. So you have, at the top is Russia.
Russia, wow.
Interesting. 53.7 out of... But that's 04. That's a lot has happened since 2004.
Yeah, but just even though it's 2004, look at the stark difference between 1 and 2.
Oh yeah, no, ridiculous.
Can you scroll in on that a little bit?
Vietnam and Russia.
It's not even close.
I want to know who has the least. I guarantee you it's going to be a lot.
10.
I bet you Mexico is going to be the number one that does not.
So go to the bottom. Let's see if the bottom shows the opposite. 10 countries with the lowest.
Mexicans are not having abortions, bro. They're just like, no. We're good.
Oh. That's pretty wild.
That's dope. I told you. I said
0.1%. Like I told you, your expertise is AI and abortion. So
Vinny's moving to Mexico.
Yeah. Thank you.
So
can we get into these numbers a little bit?
Yeah.
Where were you going with this, with the abortion issue?
I'm trying to see the areas that are growing with more kids. So his argument was that women, higher education, they not only don't want to have more kids, they can't have more kids if you want to make your career a priority over maybe other places where you're working, but you're working for different reasons. Here it's more to want to compete. So women is one. What else would be the reason for some of these countries' population to be growing as fast as they are and some that are not? But go ahead. You seem to have a question.
Well, the Russia thing that just throws me for a loop here. I didn't want to go down the abortion alley over here, but that very interesting how much Russia is leading the world in abortion. Do you have any rhyme or reason for that?
All of these things whether countries are growing, whether they are not, whether the population is declining, how many abortions they have. They can have many different causes. And I don't think that we quite know exactly how they all interact with each other. But Russia is a country which has had a problem with basically having a very negative view of the future. This has been a case since really the 1970s. Really? Russians have been suffering from the problem of alcoholism for a very long time, dying early. So there's a lot of stuff with depression and basically not seeing Russia as a place that is going anywhere. Now, one possibility is that you are not having children partly because of economic uncertainties, but also partly because life generally is tough, and a lot of Russians just don't see a future for that country, as opposed to, for example, Israel. Israel, the interesting thing about Israel is that it is a wealthy country, but women, even though they are highly educated and they are working, still keep on having children above the replacement level. And that's not just the Orthodox Jews, but also secular Jews. Mm-hmm. And one possible explanation that I've come across is that because Israel has been growing so fast and has had such a positive attitude about its future for the last 20 or 30 years, that people feel, yeah, I can have a third baby because the likelihood is that my income in 10 years' time is going to be much higher than it is right now. Now, that is not the kind of calculation that you can make in Russia or in Italy, for that matter.
If you believe the future looks bright, order your Future Looks Bright hat today.